Rene, I think we are live right now. So I'm Jay, a principal from venture capital team at SCB 10X. I'll be your moderator for this session.
It's
So
great to
Rene,
be
I'm
here.
really excited to have you here with us. So for the audience, right, Rene Reinsberg is a co-founder and CEO of Zello. For those who might be new to Zello, it is an open platform that aims to make financial tools available to anyone in the world with a mobile phone. But let's hear more about this project from Rene himself. How are you?
I'm great. Yeah, I'm excited to be here.
Where are you right now?
So I'm in San Francisco. Yeah, and it's been just a busy year, busy months. We're kind of doing some planning right now for 2021, and it looks like 2021 is going to be a really busy year too.
Right. But first off, I think it's always interesting to hear about your background. What did you do before Zello, and how did you get into crypto space?
Yeah, absolutely. So my co-founders, Sep and Merrick, and I have been working together for about a decade, and so we've been in the technology space. And I think what really attracted us to blockchain about 3.5 years ago was seeing that as sort of a new infrastructure, it could really be used to solve a lot of the big problems in the world. And I think one thing that we were really passionate about was just giving more people around the world a path to prosperity. And so we wrote that right into the mission, and we said, hey, let's enable a better financial infrastructure that can actually allow more people to participate and have access to the financial products and services that you and I take for granted. And so the last few years really have been an interesting journey where I think on the technical side, we've seen a ton of progress in the broader ecosystem from which we've obviously benefited as well at Zello. And we've also been developing a lot of stuff that we've been contributing back to the community. It's the beauty, I think, of working sort of in this open source world. And maybe to your intro, I'm definitely a co-founder of Zello, but Zello has many CEOs, where right now there's over 100 organizations that are part of the Zello Alliance for Prosperity that are all working on implementing solutions on the platform, and a lot of startups around the world as well. And so we definitely see this as something that is a big task that's only possible if we all work together.
That's interesting. And then I look at your background, Ray. You used to be in traditional finance as well. Can you share with us a bit more on that?
Yeah.
Right. It's a big move.
It's interesting. I started my career, at Morgan Stanley in sort of the fixed income capital markets division, structuring interest rate, FX, and credit derivatives. And one thing that is really exciting looking at DeFi and a lot of the innovations happening today, in sort of the blockchain space, we're actually seeing a democratization of all of these instruments. And I think when you look at derivatives, obviously people immediately think of the 2008 crisis, but derivatives can also be used for good. They can be used to manage risk more easily and allow just to kind of more efficiently allocate capital. And so when I look at a lot of the products that I used to structure or pitch to customers of Morgan Stanley, I'm excited now to think about how over the next decade, some of those same solutions can actually benefit people, small business owners, for example, all around the world, right? That maybe in an increasingly global world, receiving orders from other countries, but obviously won't have sort of a button to press on their phone that connects them with the structured products desk at Morgan Stanley. And so I think we're about to really kind of get into a very exciting time for this whole industry. And just a few weeks ago, we so kind of the first time we had kind of something like a yield curve appear in sort of on in sort of around the stablecoins on Ethereum. And And so we're taking baby steps, but I think over the next few years we'll see a lot of those same products make their way into this space, and likely lead to an explosion of a lot of other products that today we can't even imagine.
Got it. So can you share to the audience who might be like new to Zello? So what is Zello? I know there is like an infrastructure part, right? It's a wallet. There is like a governance token, and it's also there's a stable coin. So how does all these things work together? And what is your mission on this?
Absolutely. So we really started with sort of the end user experience. We said, hey, what would it take to make payments or basic financial products as easy as they are, or as easy to use as kind of someone texting, right? Sending a message through WhatsApp. And when we do that, we have to kind of actually, look at the entire stack and see where are areas where we can abstract away the kind of more complicated technology, and for an end user, just make it as easy as possible. And so if you look at Zello today, really what you have, as you pointed out, it's an open platform that is optimized really for bringing digital assets to mobile phone subscribers all around the world, right? We have about 6 billion people in the world that have a smartphone subscription, but many of those don't have access to basic financial products and services, or if they do, at very different rates than a few privileged around the world. And I think there's, from a technical perspective, when you kind of break it down, it often comes down to what do these assets look like? What monetary policies do they have? Are they volatile like Bitcoin, or are they stable like some of the Stablecoins that have taken a lot of adoption this year? And then secondly, it's often tied to identity, to a credit score, right? I mean, you guys know this from obviously the traditional banking world, right? When someone comes into the bank and asks for a loan, credit score is going to be a big factor in what rate, or even if there's a loan if possible at all. And now what we've seen with DeFi, and especially over the last few months, is that collateralized lending has really taken off, and definitely the volumes have increased. But I think the next step here is to actually kind of look at how do we bring identity onto the blockchain, and maybe complement ways that we're doing this today in the traditional kind of financial sector by leveraging data in a privacy conscious way, by bootstrapping sort of an identity protocol. And that's another core piece of Zello as sort of a platform where we have a lightweight identity protocol that actually as a starting point maps phone numbers to wallet addresses. So I can send you a payment simply by knowing your phone number, and I can do that wherever we are in the world, whether we're both in Berlin right now and we just had coffee, or you're at the other end of the world and I'm sending you a remittance. And similarly then, from sort of the digital asset perspective, I think the starting point, we recently, on the protocol, we've seen the launch of Zello dollars, which is a stable coin that's pegged to the US dollar, but backed with crypto assets. And here I think we'll, again, thinking about sort of over the next few years, we'll see an explosion of digital assets that have all kinds of different monetary policies that maybe kind of bringing community currencies into the digital realm. And to us, that's really exciting. So the Zello infrastructure itself, we want to make sure it accommodates all of that. And so there are a few key factors that are important. It needs to be fast, right? So block times are quick. Transactions take less than 5 seconds to settle. It needs to be inexpensive. So current fees are less than a cent. And, I think setting this up as an open protocol and decentralized infrastructure is important, because then you avoid having a vendor lock-in, right, where you have to rely on a single company to keep the network up or make sure that the lights are on 10 years from now. And so I think all of these ingredients give really kind of a good mix for payments infrastructure for the future.
That is a really big mission that you're working on. So I'm curious, so what is your business model? How do you aim to make money out of all this?
Yeah, the beauty, and I know I saw on the agenda you also had some of the other really interesting projects that in the space speak. For example, Robert at Compound, or if you look at a lot of the innovation in the space, right, you basically have projects that have tokens that allow for governance of the protocol, and that also capture the economic upside of the protocol being adopted and doing well. And Zello is really no different. So the Zello native asset is a governance token. So anyone who's holding it, and I saw Olaf is also a speaker. He was an early backer, so he's a Zello owner. Andreessen Horowitz, but then also individuals. We at the launch of the platform, CoinList ran a big auction, so people all around the world were able to participate and buy Zello. Anyone who holds Zello can participate in governance and decide on the future of the protocol. Now, beyond the governance function, Zello is also used to secure the network. So today, over 300 million Zello actually locked to elect validators that run the proof of stake consensus protocol and earn a staking yield for that. And last but not least, anytime that the protocol mints new Zello dollars or new kind of tokens on the platform into existence, for example, if someone wants to start paying their employees in Zello dollars, there would be an additional demand for Zello dollars, and that additional demand is generated by the protocol is minting new Zello dollars and then buying Zello, the native asset, from the open market and putting it into the reserve. And so what happens is, as kind of the protocol grows in adoption and more Zello dollars or other Zello assets are in circulation, the reserve grows proportionally, right? And so you kind of you make sure you keep sort of a level of collateralization, but then also because Zello is a fixed supply asset, that means that purely following supply and demand mechanics, Zello will basically track sort of the adoption, the success of the platform. And so anyone who's a Zello owner really also benefits from the platform being more adopted.
Got it. And you have got a lot of very well-known VCs, especially from Silicon Valley VC, right? If I'm right, I think a couple of them, as you mentioned, like Olaf, right, will also be involved in Libra, which recently Libra as DM, and we will definitely talk about this later. But now I want to focus about your investor. How did you convince them to invest in Zello? And another part is, how do you balance those stakeholder groups as they are also involved in another project that with a similar mission?
Yeah, look, I think there are some similarities in, let me just say Libra, because I'm not used yet to the new name.
Sure, get used to that name.
we'll get used to it. It's definitely, look, I think there's big friction around payments in many markets and especially cross-border. And so, we need all the help we need, right? I mean, if smart companies and people start working on these problems, that's obviously great. I think our mission is a bit more nuanced, and so I think we're really approaching this through the lens of creating an open, permissionless network, right, where anyone can participate, run a full node, be rewarded for that, and I think that's there from even just from a kind of design perspective, that's fundamentally different with Libra, where you have an association where people, only the members of the association actually allowed to kind of run these nodes and reap the rewards of this network. And so I think there's a little bit of a different approach, and obviously Facebook with 2 billion users and sort of somewhat of a mixed track record in the eyes of regulators, I think is approaching this differently than we are, but you're totally right. I think the need that I think the folks there and people in our community are seeing around just making payments more accessible and kind of lower friction, lower cost, I think that's very real. And I think there's actually a lot of other projects right in the broader ecosystem that I think working towards a similar mission. And so I generally think it's positive for Facebook to be in the space, right? I think it shines more light on this being really a problem we're solving, and so I'm generally happy that they are kind of working on this.
Right, and as we all know, right, Libra is a Lily brand because they want to distance itself from Facebook. What do you think about Libra? What does it mean as a competitors, especially with the potential launch of a single dollar pegged stablecoin early next year, right? So what is your perspective on this? Is it a threat to Zello USD, or are you looking to collaborate with them?
Yeah, look, I think it's really, I would say it's early days for everyone, but when I spend time with the founders in the Zello ecosystem, I have a really hard time not being very excited, optimistic, and it's very hard to bet against them, because they're folks that are actually building companies on this platform in market, right? That are seeing the problems that we're looking to to address every day, and are building solutions that are highly customized. And because of the open nature, right, we don't have to pretend that there's one product that's going to work everywhere and one currency that's going to kind of work for everyone. But I think we really believe in kind of a rich ecology of both digital currencies, digital assets, and then products supporting those. And I think that's really only possible in an open approach. And so I think from an architecture perspective, that gives me a lot of confidence. And then in reality, the world's a big place, right? And so I don't think short term we'll run into Libra at every corner. But there's also like there's so many there's just so much need for this, right? We recently saw this. The Grameen Foundation was one of the alliance members, ran a big COVID cash relief program in the Philippines using the Zello platform and using Zello dollars, distributing aid directly to women entrepreneurs in the Philippines, and they were then able from their Zello wallet, Valora, to directly pay for goods at a local store or buy something online through a collaboration with a merchant payment processor, Beam and Go, and basically get food and medicine delivered to their homes. And I think looking at that and seeing kind of just how much digital currencies and this technology more broadly can actually bring a benefit to real people, I think it just makes me want to have everyone work on these challenges. So yeah, I think we'll certainly see payments become much more a topic, I think, even with sort of more traditional marketplace businesses, and leveraging digital payments for a lot more kind of applications. And so from that perspective, we think that this kind of open approach is definitely a winning approach.
Right. And when you mentioned about payment, right, stablecoins probably play a major role, right? So what do you think about this market in general? Is obviously a really fast growing space, and there are stablecoins of different kinds. Guess this is like a two-part question. So how do you see stablecoin landscape evolve from your perspective? And where does Zello or CUSD fit in? What is needed for Zello to succeed?
Yeah, so it's a really good question. When we started the project, actually, other than Tether, there was not really any stablecoin that had liquidity or was kind of had adoption. And so for us, we felt it was critical to actually have that have the stability protocol be a core component of the protocol. But over the last 3 years, we've seen really kind of rise of stable coins and different approaches. And by the way, all of these work on Zello as well, right? And so Zello is a fork of Geth, and with kind of basically 100% EVM compatibility, really can be infrastructure for all of the innovations that we've seen on Ethereum and other EVM compatible chains. And so with respect to Zello dollars, there are a few innovations that make it particularly well suited for sort of payments, the payments use case. One of them being that Zello dollars, so stablecoins, on Zello, can be used for also paying for gas. And so anyone who's fiddled with like MetaMask on Ethereum knows the challenge of, hey, I just want to send $10 to someone, and then you realize, oops, you don't have enough ETH to do so, right? And so for us, from sort of a user perspective, really kind of taking some of the complexity away was critical to basically make it possible on Zello to not have to kind of not require another asset to do that. And so now if you're, if we're both, or if I want to send you a payment, I can simply send you $1 on Valora, and I don't ever have to kind of actually worry about having Zello to pay for the transaction. And that I think is critical. And I think that's kind of just one of many features that really, when you take a viewpoint of like make stablecoins used for real world use cases, we made sure to kind of make this part of the protocol. Now, longer term, like I said, I'm really excited about having a very rich ecology of digital assets on Zello, and that includes tBTC, which is the Keep team is bringing through a trustless bridge Bitcoin onto Zello, which has already done that for Ethereum. We have a bunch of other assets launching even early kind of next year, and so really I think there's with sort of digital currencies, leveraging smart contracts, right? There's a whole new expressiveness to currencies that I think even central banks will take advantage of as they think about, for example, how to influence the velocity of money, right? You could use demurrage to do so, which is really hard to do kind of in sort of the traditional financial system. And so I, personally think we'll see sort of a really rich ecosystem of digital assets in the future.
Right, and to dive deeper into the competitive landscape of stablecoin, in your view, right, do you think it's the ultimate war between Celo and Libra, or it's more between like the stablecoin as a whole versus central bank digital currencies? It's a thing this year, right, that there are many announcements of those central banks.
Look, like I said, I'm excited for Libra, but also, I'm kind of curious to see how they kind of go to market and where they start. I think, there's obviously big potential of just making payments on for example, Facebook easier, right, for merchants on Facebook. We're really focused on use cases in market with, physical merchants, with online merchants as well. But really, introducing digital assets into communities that currently struggle and that are outside the traditional financial system, or that are underserved by the traditional financial system, or use cases where it's just currently really painful. I mean, I'm using Valora to send dollars to a friend halfway around the world because there's really no good way to do that with low amounts today. But similarly, you have big businesses who have global presence. Think about like their treasury. Think about payments they do between sort of country offices, right, and facilitating sort of their treasury. And I think ultimately, I'm not an expert in even one of these kind of use cases, right? So it's really about the builders in our ecosystem that are very close to these and enabling them to do the best possible job by providing, things like, obviously good documentation, guidance, support. And we're seeing this today. If you go on our Discord, a lot of conversations happening between different companies, teams building on the platform, where sort of cLabs, the company that I run, is sort of one of the early teams, has a much smaller role than we used to, for sure.
Got it. And let's discuss about regulators. So where do you see regulators fit into the picture of stablecoin? And you obviously saw that there is a stablecoin legislation that is being proposed in the US, right? Which would require stablecoin issuer to get a banking charter. So what does this mean to you? I guess in general, so how do you think about regulator, especially you work in different jurisdictions and you have to work with like them in general? How do you collaborate with them?
We think this is a really critical time for regulators, for governance more broadly, to look at this space. And so we, from the outset, even before the launch of the platform, we're actively engaging, looking for sort of the dialogue, and really just hoping to educate on the benefits of this technology. And I think from some of the early use cases on the platform, I think it's really clear that there are massive gains from making financial services and products more accessible to regular people, which in many places is very aligned with what regulators are looking to solve for as well. And so I think for us, the next few years are critical, right? Because in many markets, there isn't clear regulation on crypto assets, on providers in the space. And so, we want to play an active role. We want to be sort of a thought partner. I think push back where we see things that are potentially harming innovation and harming actually bringing some of these benefits to people that could really benefit from them. But also being reasonable and making suggestions on how to prevent some of the kind of the bad use cases that really no one in this community, in our community and the broader community wants to see happening, right? And so I think that's always kind of the key goal. I think the nice thing, and I think coming back to Libra, where Libra has really helped is it's really actually kind of raised the topic, right? And so you now have not just C-level executives, but you have people in central banks, central bankers directly, being very engaged, leaning in, wanting to understand how to think about, CBDCs, both from a B2B perspective and a retail perspective. And while I don't think we'll necessarily have the whole world kind of change, overnight or even the next year where everybody moves to these, I think over the long term, over like the next decade, I do see many major central banks, adopt digital assets, and there are great benefits to go with that. But I think it has to be done responsible. Quite frankly, I don't think as an ecosystem, the technology right now is mature enough to actually do that for kind of widespread adoption in sort of a major market, right? So I think we still as an industry have to kind of grow much more, but I think it's great to start taking baby steps, starting to experiment and pilot solutions and learn from that. And we want to be, we want to have a big role in that, and that's certainly an area that's very interesting to us.
Right. And one of the themes, right, of our conference today is the use case of DeFi.
Yeah.
Zello is bringing DeFi to mobile phone, which is really interesting. So what is the application or the use case that you're most excited about? And what is the use case that it might not be cracked as yet, but once cracked, right, you believe it will drive meaningful adoption?
Yeah, absolutely. Look, I'm generally very excited about, decentralized finance, open finance. I think and I don't think I'm alone in being excited about this. I think we'll unlock a lot more values when we move from collateralized lending to uncollateralized lending, right? And I think a big requirement for that is having some form of, mechanism that kind of resembles a credit score and doing that trustlessly kind of on chain. And so that's an area that's, from a research perspective, been very exciting for us from the start. My co-founder, Seb Kambar, actually is the inventor of Eigentrust, which is a peer-to-peer reputation protocol that he wrote a white paper on it back in 2002 or 3, before white papers were a thing. And I think that's been interesting to us because really that starts unlocking credit for people that don't have kind of wealth or like an asset to basically kind of allow access, right, to capital. So I think there's going to be a whole kind of a whole slew of kind of approaches and smart teams kind of trying to figure out what's sort of the best way to kind of start enabling that. And I'm sure we go from sort of over collateralized to like one-to-one collateralized to slightly under collateralized and more and more, and so we're all the way down to having sort of a trustless kind of uncollateralized lending mechanism. And that I think will enable a lot of really great economic activity and allow, for example, a small business owner to jumpstart a business, right, or get working capital to get going, and that's the kind of stuff that gets us going at Celo and the Celo ecosystem.
This is awesome. And my last question of the interview, right, I would like to focus more on you, like especially you experience in crypto. So what are some book or article or resources that help you out the most when you were starting out? This might be helpful for our audience here.
Oh, that's interesting. I've been thinking about this in the context of just how to kind of make this more accessible to, even to like, family members and friends, and it's, the holidays coming up. So like, people always like confused, like, what am I doing? And I think it's getting easier and easier every day because there's more and more kind of better ways of explaining this ecosystem and technology.
I get it.
But depending on who, I mean, I think one thing that I don't know if you ever saw this, Jack Dorsey and his team over at Square early on did almost like a kids kind of comic on Bitcoin, which I thought was extremely well done. And I've sent this to a bunch of people over the years, and then maybe more for sort of people that are looking to kind of join the ecosystem from from sort of a work perspective. I found, especially in the early days, I found the resources that Chris Dixon and Katie over at Andreessen, the team had put together, Crypto Canon, kind of a whole kind of collection of resources and blog posts, that I think kind of, depending on how deep you want to go, give you kind of a great mix and a great intro to the space. So yeah, for anyone who hasn't seen that, highly recommend that as a starting point as well.
I think I'll check that out myself as well after this. So that's all the question I have. I'm glad to see you guys coming into this space and the mission that you are like going, right? So thank you for your time and good luck with everything, Rene. Bye.
Thanks so much, Dave. Bye.
Thank you.